I read this great book back in 2017, 2018, and multiple times since. And this book here is for anybody who finds themselves struggling with procrastination. And while procrastination hasn't been a terrible struggle of mine, it's always illuminating. The want to procrastinate, the want to put the things that are important on the back burner are consistently reappearing in my life. So this book has been very, very influential in keeping procrastination at bay. The book is by Steven Pressfield. It is called The War of Art. This is not The Art of War, which is also a great book, but this is The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. And it's communicated through the point of view of a writer who is to not procrastinate as a writer, but it's very relevant for anybody in any space. But I found it to be most relevant for small business owners. If you're a business owner, especially a relatively small business, we'll call a small business anything less than $1 million a year, you're doing a lot of roles. You wear a lot of hats. You got to understand a little bit about tech. You got to understand a little bit about ads. You got to learn to understand a little bit about systems, and then also the things that you're serving. And maybe for you, you're a coach, or maybe you're selling a product. So you have to understand the websites and where you're putting the products on and how to navigate the back end. And you got to understand a little bit about taxes and deductions. You just got to wear a lot of hats. And with that, there's parts of our business that we don't like doing. If I'm being honest, I don't like doing a lot of my business. There's only a few things within my business that I really enjoy doing. I enjoy coaching, sharing information, encouraging someone, seeing a breakthrough. And outside of that, I don't really like much of what I do. I don't like sales. I don't like marketing. Oftentimes, I don't like creating content, even though that does intertwine with adding value and sharing. I'd rather do it in person. Online stuff as well is friction for me at times, where I'd rather just share the information in person, but online there's a greater reach, and obviously it's like how I'm talking to you guys right now. But that can be at times friction for me. And with that, the book War of Art really lays out the importance of overcoming procrastination. So if you struggle with certain areas of your business, you procrastinate on them. Maybe you do a few things really, really well, and then there's a couple of things that you're just constantly kicking down the road. I mean, for instance, for years, I would just push my taxes back to October. I just kept kicking the can. Just procrastinate. I didn't really want to get it done. Didn't really care. I'd end up eating a fee. Just like, whatever. It's just procrastinating. Little things like this that I find myself procrastinating on within the business. Steven Pressfield, he shares this couple points I want to share with you guys today, and the one is the pro doesn't procrastinate, and he calls it turning pro. And I just love this. Like a pro shows up even when he doesn't want to show up. A pro shows up even when he's tired. And I view it to be very similar to work. Like when I worked in the coal mines, for instance, like I just went to work even when I didn't feel like it. You just gotta, like, it just is what it is. You gotta provide. You do things even when you don't feel like doing them. Feelings have nothing to do with your work. And that was a massive breakthrough. It sounds so simple. You're like, yeah, of course. But when you actually begin to apply that and act on that in your day to day, and you say the way I feel has nothing to do with my work. I do my work. I'm a professional. I show up on game night and I play no matter what. Man, that will radically change your procrastination. All of a sudden, you're just not procrastinating. You're just doing your work because you're not motivated by the way that you're feeling about the project in the moment. You do it because you're a pro. Now, another thing he talked about inside the book that I've been really hip on right now, and I've been sharing with my Do Hard Things community on our weekly group calls, is identifying, and this is what Stephen Pressfield talks about, is identifying the importance. So let me say this better. It's identifying this is an important thing to do for all of us in our business, and it's hard to label this. So let me just walk through it. Identifying the difference between what is important and what is urgent. See, if you operate a small business, everything feels urgent. Everything. It feels like you gotta get done now. You gotta get done now. It feels like this constant state of busy. And I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, but busy is a state of mind. Reality gets on by itself. Go out in nature for 10 hours. You're not gonna feel busy. Reality beginning on the way it is. We put a label on it. And since we put a label on it, we put a busy label on it, everything feels urgent. But the reality is, most of the tasks that we believe are urgent aren't very important. So you need to identify what are the most important tasks within your business and do those. And I have narrowed in on this over the years. My work schedule, I only work a few days a week, and I only focus on the things that's important. I really just put everything, what moves the needle forward for me in my business is about the only things I focus on. I don't really focus too much on fluff. Anything else that doesn't move the needle, I just simply don't do. And that has radically changed everything for me. I only do what is important. And this has just took 20 hours a week off of my plate. It did because I was realizing that many of the things that I thought were important were really just these things that are like busy. They just kept me busy. It's almost like they weren't necessary for my business. They weren't necessary to move the needle forward in my business. And to be a little bit more tangible with this is I never prioritized networking prior to 2018, 2019. And then around that time, I started prioritizing networking. And networking is one of the most important parts of my business. But I network much different than I think most people. Like my networking is like, hey, let's go out for a 10-mile run, or go swim across the lake, or go for a kayak adventure. Just because the line of work that I do is a little bit more in line with personal development and fitness. So these things fit in very well. Let's go for a hike. These are very, very important for me. Where I would be jamming out on trying to understand Facebook ads or doing XYZ. These things, they were just not important, because if I was just connecting with people in the real world, connecting with people in life, connecting people through online, getting them to come and hang out in the real world, I didn't have to worry so much about throwing a bunch of ad dollars at Facebook Market or Facebook Place, whatever it's called, Facebook ads. So I started focusing on what was important in my business and what actually moved the needle for me. And that helped scale the business. Another part that's very, very important for me is creating content for my business. Doing the podcast right now. I've been very encouraged to do the podcast, and many of you have been following along for years, and you've listened to the previous podcasts that I've had, like through different stations, different channels. And while I am passionate about hosting a podcast in this format, it's not the most important part of my business. I'm not driving as many leads through the podcast as I would through maybe my text community app where I'm delivering value, or Twitter, or networking in person. In-person events at the conference I host, I would maybe drive more leads that way. But the podcast is a good layer. It does definitely help. It does support the cause. It gets a more in-depth look at my mind so that I can share the concepts with you guys, and maybe you relate, or maybe it gets you thinking a little bit, which can be productive for the business. But this, on the other hand, is not the most important thing that I do. And that's why over the years I just had podcasted less, because it wasn't what I believed and deemed as to be the most important needle mover within the business. So these are some real life examples of recognizing what is important in your business and the needle movers. For you, someone who is running a team will say, one of the most important part of your business is going to be team culture, but you might be spending the least amount of time on team culture. Improving your team culture could radically change your profit margins. You get a team excited, fired up to go to work, fired up to get their job done, enjoying what they're doing, and productivity levels will go through the roof. So let's focus on what is important, recognize what is important, and let's focus on turning pro, doing things even when we don't feel like it. Sending you guys a lot of love this morning on the way to the gym. Have a good day. Peace.